Yeah. Well, that's one of the things, whether it's attracting a coaching staff or attracting players to come here. One of the first things we sell is the Jonesboro community, the passionate people that are here, our fan base, and the community overall. We give them tours of downtown, try to get them around as many people in the community as we can, but there's also an expectation that comes along with that. It starts with our players. We have a Champions in the Community program. We've been extremely active in the community with our reading program at the local elementary schools and want to continue to build upon that. Recess with the Red Wolves, so much that we go into it. We're doing 2 to 3 community service projects a week. When you couple, the rigors of being a student athlete with academics, an off-season training program, and that, want to open up our practices to the community. Doing the all-access night on April 30th, I think, is great for our fans to be able to get out. And, football's different than any other sport because you play with a helmet, So nobody really sees your face. You're really kind of known by your name and your number. And so the more interaction we can get our players out in the community, the better. And it's the same thing. I'm working on, if anybody can help me, I've had this everywhere we've been. This is the only place where we haven't had like a social membership for our coaches to be able to go to JCC or Ridgepoint. And you look at how many of our fan bases are members of those great 2 country clubs, but yet our coaching staff doesn't have the ability to go and interact with them. And so I'm trying to do some things with outreach programs with the local golf courses, Sage Meadows, all those. Just, with spring coming up, I think the more that we can be involved in the community, the better. The life of a football coach is a little more challenging just because, we have spring football, and then as soon as spring football concludes, then we go on the road for spring recruiting for another month. Then the month of June is all camps. So there's a lot that, we don't have time, but when we have time, that's why the baseball weekend was phenomenal. The right field rowdies, just everybody, seeing people come out, meeting people for the first time. I've been here for 5 years, and there were so many people I hadn't met that were at the baseball game. And I think it builds momentum for our entire university, for the whole athletic department, and then that's a bridge that gets us to football season. And what Coach Silva has done has really been remarkable so far. And so, but the way our community came out, and I know that's been a vision of his. When he got the job, we met in his office. I went over there and we met for probably 2-3 hours of just, selling a vision of what baseball games could be here. And to see that kind of come to fruition was pretty neat the other night.
All right, Coach, you mentioned getting off to a fast start this year. Obviously, last year that wasn't the case with the 1-4 start. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with the schedule. You've been all over all that. But just in your opinion, this off season overall, what do you guys got to do better this off season to kind of get out of that start?
That's a good question, and that's actually a question that I've continually asked myself. Be very candid with you, I thought we had an average June and July. We have to be in much better shape, much better condition, have to be more mentally and physically ready for training camp. There's going to be some challenges along the way with fields and different construction projects going on here. So how can we create an advantage there from a mental toughness standpoint? But that's been probably the forefront in my mind of that question. And a lot of it is, the scheduling. And I've said it too, is if we want to be a team that competes for the college football playoff, there has to be a complete altering change in our scheduling philosophy. And, everyone says, oh, we want to go compete to play in college football playoffs, but with that comes your scheduling monumental change in money games and the expectations of your non-conference scheduling. And I think the teams that do that are the teams that give themselves an opportunity. I think I said it, Indiana is the model. You look at what they've been able to do there, and I think I speak for them, is that the AD there has been monumental in the philosophical change and the way you schedule, the way you start the season, all that. And so much in today's world is having instant success, and that's where last year's team was remarkable. If you really think about it, it was not done only here. When you start 1-4, and regardless, like you just said, of the schedule had a lot to do with it, but people don't realize that you are what your record says. So we start 1-4, and that's why I'm so indebted to all those players. Nobody quit, nobody gave in, nobody gave up, nobody listened, and we went 6-2 and won a great bowl game. And we're only one of 15 programs in the country that won back-to-back bowl games. So winning bowl games are hard, and those 2 losses came on the final play of the game. And so also, what can we do in those 2 losses? What could we have done better? Now, make no mistake, we also won some games on the final play of the game too. But I constantly ask myself, we talk about it as a staff all the time, and we will constantly evaluate that. And, each team needs something different. That's why no 2 teams are ever the same. So last year's team may have needed something different in June and July than in August than what this team needs. And we'll continue to figure that out as we get into spring football. How you doing, man? Congratulations, by the way. If you haven't filled that other spot, can you keep me in mind, please?
I'll talk to Chris. You guys had 3 practices this week, and then you go out on spring break. Just talk about what you want to see from the guys before they head out.
Yeah. Attention to detail, discipline and details. How do we retain? So, what we do throughout the winter months is we install. So, practice 1 is install 1. Practice 2, you're installing install 2, which is your offense, defense, and special teams. You break your system down, and there's a systematic way of installation. Practice 3 is installation. However, this will be the 3rd time that we have install 1, 2, and 3. So what is our retention from the winter months? And then I think the biggest challenge is, okay, how do we respond when we come back from spring break? I think that's the biggest thing. What do we do with that week off? Are we disciplined to stay in shape, live our life the right way, make good choices and decisions? Where we have from a mental standpoint, because we jump right into it with a practice on Tuesday. So I think I'll know a little bit more about our team in the way we come back from spring break. But I think the first 2 in helmets, it's details, it's discipline. I talked to our team last night about winning football in making the routine plays routinely. You hear me talk about that all the time, but like I told them, the people that make millions and millions of dollars, like you look at the shortstop. Why does he make millions of dollars? Because he can make the routine throw from the shortstop area to first base. It's not because he can make off-schedule plays. He makes the consistent play consistently. And I think that's what we're hunting is, can we make routine plays routinely? Can one of our quarterbacks put the ball in play when there's a wide open receiver? Rick Barnes used to talk to me all the time about, the difference between college basketball and the NBA is in the NBA, every shot is contested. So in the NBA, if you have a non-contested shot, you better make that. You better be in the 80% range of hitting non-contested shots, or else you won't be in the NBA. It's the same thing when you look at quarterbacks, of putting the ball in play, receivers being able to make the routine catch, the contested catches, routine tackles, all those things. That's what I need to see on a consistent basis.
You kind of touched on what I wanted to ask about, Coach, with the quarterbacks. Obviously, you've got 3 new guys, and then Ethan Crawford, who was on the squad last year. What's going to ultimately make the difference guy who steps to the front and becomes the face of your offense?
Yeah, there's a lot, and that's another good question, and we continue to talk about that. But everywhere I've been, you know who picks the starting quarterback? The team. The team picks the starting quarterback by the way they rally around them, by the way they believe in them. And that gets back to the leadership thing, is who's going to step up, who has the command presence, who's the CEO quarterback, who understands the expectations of playing quarterback here at Arkansas State. We had a great session last week. We brought in the former quarterback coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he spent 2 days with us, and great friend of mine, and evaluated our quarterbacks meetings with them, and just taught quarterback intangibles and fundamentals and details. And so I think the biggest thing for them and every other player is you just got to be you. Trust the process, and just get better. I think get incrementally better every single day. And it's not, who flashes. It's just who constantly improves from practice 1 to the spring game and practice 15. That's what we're looking for. But command of the offense. Playing quarterback is you have to be a problem solver. If we're in the wrong formation, fixing the problem. Understanding down and distance, understanding field quadrants. There's so much that goes into how to distribute the ball, understanding one-on-one matchups, understanding your RPOs, doing great with your eyes of reading different first level, second level players. There's a lot that goes into it. So I think it's just a process and a journey for all of them. They've all showed signs of really good things. I think all 4 of the individuals have different unique skill sets. So that's what's going to make it even more challenging for us, is what does our team need to win? But they've all bonded together. They all push each other. They all respect each other. But I think the biggest thing is just who commands the team. That's the biggest thing, is who's the face of the program and who commands the respect of their peers.
Coach, you always talk about during the season you reinvent yourself from week to week, and then now, obviously, with the portal, you have to reinvent your team every year as well. How do you feel about the foundation of guys that you have returning as far as letting them go, and then maybe guys that didn't see action?
Yeah, you're right. We are in an era where you're building your team every year, but I think in order to sustain success, you have to have a foundation. You have to have a core in your culture. And our older players have been remarkable. They've done a good job of holding our newcomers to a high standard, but really teaching them. And that's been great to see. And what you see is pride in who we are. And I mean, we had it was a great coach moment. We had one time where we were doing perfect sprints and different discipline things, and a kid kept screwing up, and his way of kind of getting through it was to laugh, and our older players took offense to that. So you could see the pride in the culture and the connection that's been built over time here by our older players. But I will tell you this too, I think our newcomers have done a remarkable job. We spent more time on culture fit. We spent more time on character and competitive character more than we've ever had. And we had to get it done, as y'all know, in 10 days. And I always tell our players this, they come here because of our culture, okay? But once you get here, are you enhancing our culture? How are you enhancing our culture because you're part of it? And I think all the players we brought in have really enhanced our culture, on top of the returners that we've had that, we're fighting for our culture every day. So that's been really rewarding for me to see. They've done a really good job with that. And I don't throw out compliments very well, and we have to completely change tomorrow, because culture is something that you got to fight for every day. The minute, we always say that the thing you walk by is the new standard you set. So You walk by and there's a piece of trash on the ground and you don't pick it up, that's the new standard. If we go out to practice today and we allow our players' shirts to be untucked, that's the new standard that you set. If we allow them to not sprint off the field after the fourth play of the rack, that's the new culture that we set. So all these things, and on top of that is also teaching a lot of newcomers on your staff those principles and values. So it's been an off season of constantly teaching and setting our standard and our expectations.
Can you just talk about the differences coming into this year without the transfer portal kind of looming at the end of the spring, kind of like we had a unique situation last year, and then just follow up to that, care to name the 4 players that you mentioned at the top as, you know, who are kind of standing out right now?
Yeah, it's different and it's positive. For me personally, and I know different coaches have different opinions, but to be able, I think it's allowed our players to buy in more to the development of our team because they don't have an escape clause at the end of spring football called the transfer portal. That they know they have to make it work, they know that they're here. I think it's really helped them. I really do. I think it's helped us. You know, you're able to develop your players more. You're able to, there's no hesitation. There's no, you know, of already, oh gosh, who's going to go in the portal at the end of the spring? And I think it's been healthy for them. I think they've been able to focus more on the task at hand. I think it's helped them academically. So I think for the overall health of our industry, the overall health of them personally, I think having one portal window and where it was has helped them really be able to focus all their efforts on their growth and their development, being a better person, being a better teammate, being a better student, being a better student athlete, buying into the principles and values. You talked about buying into the community. You know, this is your new home. Jonesboro is your new home. And so I think just when you look at all those things, it's really aided us. So I think it's been really healthy from that standpoint. You know, the person who's had a tremendous off season has been Chauncey Cobb. Chauncey Cobb has put over 22 pounds on since the season. He benches and squats double his body weight. He's turned into a leader. You know, like today he's going to be a little bit late for the team meeting because of class, and he stops by and he says, hey, what am I going to miss in the team meeting? He has the respect of his peers. So he's really been the one that has really been the forefront. Joe Drew's another individual who's really been remarkable. We're trying him at linebacker, so we've asked him to put more weight on, and that's been a positional change that we'll evaluate throughout the course of spring. We all know what he was able to do as a true freshman. Noah Flores is a corner, a transfer from Utah State that has come in and just taken off. He's one of our leaders. He's one of the culture setters. He's been great. So those are individuals that, you know, have really stepped up for us. And we have a lot of people that are on the cusp of that elite group. And I know as spring goes on, we'll have many more. Yeah, well, you just said it, you know, playing the offensive line, there's a connection, there's a camaraderie, there's a trust that goes on in there. We have players that have played, but also the players we brought in, that's one of the most competitive rooms in our building right now, and they're embracing that. And Coach Armour spoke with our team a little bit about that last night is, you know, what competitiveness brings is excellence. And so I think the players we brought in really fit the profile culturally, player-wise, of what we're looking for. And then the returning players. And, you know, I always just don't look at returners because I always talk about you just can't be a year older. You got to be a year better. And so all that goes into it. But, an individual who hasn't done a lot because of injuries, but to have him back is Tristan Smith. He's been remarkable from a leadership standpoint. I want to say he truly bench pressed over 550 pounds. When we came here, or when Coach came here, Coach Armour, so we had to get a lot of new equipment in the weight room. Well, the thing we couldn't get right away is the different bars, okay? So when you squat and when you bench. And so what happened in our testing is we had some guys that were benching and squatting more than that bar could actually hold. So we now get an opportunity to improve our weight room by getting new bars because we now have players that can do more weight than the bar will hold. So we have to get better bars, if that makes sense. So that was one of the things we spoke about last night as well.
Coach, I want to ask you about your defensive line. Obviously, you had a lot of success in rebuilding it last year through the portal. Had to kind of turn around and do it again. Obviously, a lot to be determined there. What are your thoughts on where you stand on the defensive line?
Rebuilding again. I'm really encouraged. Again, I think these players have come in, they've embraced our culture. It's extremely competitive. From a returner standpoint, which we don't have a lot of returners, Ryan Reese has been an individual who has really stood out. You can tell he's been a year in our program with his effort, his leadership. He's in my office every week. Tell me where I'm at on the 5 levels of commitment. Been really, really excited about him. But that whole room, I think we have a lot of depth at the defensive tackle position. I think for us is who are, designated pass rushers on third down. Who's going to be our edge presence. So I think we'll find out a little bit more as that goes. But I think we have more depth in the defensive front than we've ever had.
Guys, anything else before we close?
You guys have had some really good, insightful questions, and a lot of questions, like you asked about the 1 and 4 and what can we do better. That's constantly what I'm playing over in my mind, over and over. And, what does this team need versus the past teams? And we'll find out a little bit more about our identity and helmets in the next 2 days, and then pads on day 3. Have a great 3 practice evaluation of where we're at, take the break for spring, and then have 12 more, and really be able to really then alter, if we need to, our install, what we need. But I think it's staying the course and treating every day as a life of its own and just working to be the best that we possibly can be. But, I appreciate your question on the community because that's very important to me personally and to our program. And I think the more that we can get our players out and they can meet these players and see what they're all about, there's some remarkable stories, some great stories, some great people. And I think they're great additions to the Jonesboro community. So, excited for our fans and everyone to really get around our players. That's why the April 30th event will be really big here at the Operations Center. So, again, I appreciate y'all being here, and anything we can do for y'all to help your job better, we will do it. So, thank you.
Thanks, Coach.